I never expected to tell this story, let alone to strangers on the internet. It's not something you bring up casually over drinks, and it sure as hell isn't something you want to revisit. But here I am, doing just that, because some things stick in your chest like splinters. And no matter how long it's been, how much time's passed, you keep brushing against them. Maybe telling it will help get one or two of them out. My name's Andrew, I'm 27 years old, and 6 months ago I was engaged to be married. Her name was Leah. Everyone called her Elle, including me. I met her when I was 20 and she was 19, back when the world still felt big and open and full of promise. We were both in college, dorms on the same floor, just a few doors apart. Our first conversation was nothing special. She had a box of laundry in her arms and her keys clenched between her teeth, and I held the door open for her. She mumbled a thank you with the keys still in her mouth, and we both laughed. That was it. That was how it started. It's funny, the way small moments can change your whole life. We started hanging out during study breaks and late-night food runs. We found out we both lived near the same part of town, just 2 towns apart, barely 20 minutes. That made things easy over the holidays. I'd drive us both back home when the semester ended or when we needed a weekend escape from campus. At first, it was just practical. I had the car. She didn't. But those drives turned into conversations I still remember, years later. Late-night talks about everything and nothing. Favorite movies, family traditions, the kinds of childhood fears you don't usually admit out loud. She had this quiet confidence, like she didn't need to be the center of attention to own a room. It got to me. Quick. By the end of her freshman year, we were officially together. We told our families not long after. That's the kind of people we were, close with our folks, maybe a little traditional in that sense. I was raised in a house where Sunday dinners were sacred, and your parents always knew who you were dating. Leah's family was the same way. So it wasn't long before we were meeting each other's parents, shaking hands, exchanging those polite, "I've heard so much about you," smiles. I remember the first time she met my father. Benjamin. Most people just called him Ben. He was, well, he was magnetic, for lack of a better word. The kind of man who walked into a room and filled it without even trying. Loud, charming, quick with a joke or a toast. He could talk to anyone about anything, and you'd swear he cared about every word you said. People liked him, envied him, respected him. I did too. Back then. My mother, Rachel, was his opposite in almost every way. Quiet. Measured. Always watching, taking things in before speaking. She was the anchor in our family, the kind of woman who didn't need praise or attention. You knew she was there, keeping everything afloat. Leah's parents were simpler people. Her dad was a mechanic, her mom worked part-time at a library. Kind folks, soft-spoken, always offering us food whenever we stopped by. They loved Leah with everything they had, and they welcomed me without hesitation. It was easy, back then. Everything was. After I graduated, I moved back home and landed a solid job in the city. It wasn't flashy, but it paid well, and it gave me room to breathe. Leah still had a year left of school, but we made it work. I'd visit her on weekends, she'd come home during breaks. When she graduated, she got a job at a marketing firm not far from where I worked. We moved in together. Got a little apartment just outside the city. Small, nothing special, but it was ours. For 3 years we lived like that, building a life, piece by piece. I still remember the night I proposed. We were on vacation in the Adirondacks, standing by a lake as the sun dipped low behind the trees. I got down on one knee with hands shaking and a ring that had taken me 6 months to save for. She said yes before I could even finish the question. God, she was crying. I was too. That's the part that keeps haunting me. How real it all felt. We started planning the wedding not long after. Picking venues, tasting cakes, arguing over guest lists in that playful way couples do. We weren't perfect, we had our share of fights, mostly about silly stuff. But I thought we were solid. I thought we were building something that would last. Looking back, there were signs. Little things I didn't pay enough attention to. My dad started calling Leah more often, asking her questions about family gatherings, birthday parties, wedding planning. At first, I thought it was sweet. My old man, taking an interest, welcoming her into the family. But sometimes I'd walk into a room and they'd go quiet. Or he'd call and ask to speak with her directly. I remember one day, her phone was ringing while she was in the shower. I glanced at the screen and saw it was him. I picked up. "Hey, Dad," I said, casual. There was a pause. "Oh. It's you." He tried to cover it up quick, said he wanted to ask Leah about Mom's birthday plans. But something about his voice felt off. Like I'd interrupted something. I brushed it off. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure fiancé who reads too much into things. But now, writing this, I wish I had been. Because the truth was, I wasn't the only one building a future with Leah. I just didn't know it yet. The day everything unraveled started like any other. It was a Thursday, Leah's day off. She usually spent it cleaning up the apartment, doing laundry, maybe trying out a new recipe she found on Pinterest. Sometimes we'd eat lunch together if I could slip away from work. Nothing unusual. That morning, she made breakfast for both of us. French toast, strawberries on the side, coffee just the way I liked it, 2 sugars, no cream. She gave me a kiss before I left, said, "I love you, babe. Have a great day." And I did. At least, I thought I did. I was already halfway to the office when I realized I'd forgotten some important documents I needed for a 3 p.m. meeting. I cursed under my breath, thinking about turning around. Then I figured I'd just swing by the apartment during my lunch break. No big deal. I didn't bother texting Leah, I didn't want to interrupt her me time. We'd been texting throughout the morning like normal. Stupid stuff, what should we make for dinner? Did I want her to pick up anything from the store? She'd done the laundry and found a sock of mine that didn't have a match. Domestic nonsense. The kind of back and forth you don't think twice about, unless everything suddenly stops making sense. Around noon, I left the office and headed home. I remember the weather clearly. Overcast, muggy. The kind of day that makes you feel like something's hanging in the air. I pulled into our apartment complex and saw a familiar-looking silver SUV parked near the visitor spaces. I knew that car. Hell, I'd ridden in it 1,000 times as a kid. It was my dad's. Still, nothing clicked. It wasn't weird for him to stop by, he was known to drop things off, bring over old photos, or just pop in unannounced. He and Leah had been working together on something for my mom's birthday, or so they claimed. I figured maybe he brought her something for that. A cake. Decorations. Whatever. The elevator ride up felt slow. My key slid into the lock like normal. I pushed open the door with one hand and cradled my briefcase in the other. Then I froze. There were clothes on the floor. Not just any clothes, his clothes. His blazer. His belt. His goddamn socks. My brain tried to play catch-up. I told myself, maybe he spilled something. Maybe they're doing laundry. But then I saw her clothes. Leah's sweatshirt. Her bra. I remember standing there in the doorway like a statue. My ears started ringing before I even registered the sounds coming from the bedroom. Soft moans. A creaking bed. A hushed voice I recognized too well. I walked toward the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. Like my body wasn't mine. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I don't even know why. Some part of me must have known I'd need proof, receipts, they'd call it online. I stepped over the trail of clothes and moved toward the bedroom, phone in hand, arms shaking. The door was open. I stood in the doorway, filming. My hand was ice cold. The room reeked of sweat and betrayal. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, long enough to watch him on top of her. Her eyes were closed. She didn't even know I was there. Then I flipped the light on. They both jumped, scrambling like teenagers caught in the act. Sheets flew. Bodies twisted. Leah gasped and clutched the blanket to her chest. My father stared at me, frozen. We locked eyes. That's when he realized I was recording. "Andrew, wait," he said, fumbling for something to cover himself. His voice cracked. I took a step back. "You have 5 seconds to get the hell away from me." He wrapped a towel around his waist, started toward me. I didn't wait for him to finish. I swung. My fist landed square on his jaw. His head snapped back and smacked the doorframe. He crumpled like a bag of bricks. Leah screamed. I turned the phone toward her. "You got nothing to say to your fiancé? Just sitting there, worried about your buddy?" She started to cry, babbling something I couldn't hear. My heart was pounding in my ears. I took a deep breath. "I came home to grab papers for work. That's it. I'll be back in 15 minutes. If either of you are still here when I get back, this video goes to everyone you know, your family, your boss, your entire contact list." My father was groaning, starting to move again. I looked down at him. "You're dead to me. You're not my father. And if you've got any dignity left, you'll go home and tell Mom the truth before I do." And then I left. I didn't drive anywhere right away. I just sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, shaking. My phone was still recording in my lap. I looked out at the apartment complex like it was a place I'd never seen before. Like my whole life had been built on the foundation of a lie I didn't see until it collapsed under me. Eventually, my boss called, wondering where I was. I told her I was on my way back. When I handed her the documents, she looked at me like I had blood on my face. I didn't realize it until she pointed it out. "Andrew, you're bleeding." I looked down. My collar was smeared red. "It's not mine," I said. "It's my father's." That's when I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched the whole video without blinking. My boss, I mean. She's one of those women who always seems unshakable, sharp suits, sharper words, never a hair out of place. But after the clip ended, she just sat there, silent. Like her mind was trying to catch up to what her eyes had just seen. "That's your fiancé?" she asked eventually. I nodded. "And, that's your father?" I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She shook her head slowly, stood from her desk, and walked over to the window, her arms crossed tight against her chest. "Jesus, Andrew." The silence stretched. She turned back toward me and softened her voice. "You don't have to be here right now. I can reschedule the meeting. Or push it off on Jenkins." I shook my head. "I don't want to go home. If I don't have something to do, I'll fall apart." She hesitated. "You're sure?" I nodded again. "All right," she said quietly. "But after the meeting, take tomorrow off. Take next week off if you need to." I changed shirts in my office, washed the blood off my neck in the bathroom, then sat through a 60-minute strategy meeting like I hadn't just watched my entire life implode. I smiled, I nodded, I answered questions. I even cracked a joke about quarterly targets. Nobody knew the difference. Nobody except my boss. She watched me from the corner of the room like a hawk, like she was afraid I might shatter into a million pieces at any second. I left right after the meeting and drove around for nearly an hour before I finally pulled back into the apartment complex. They were gone. The trail of clothes was gone, too. Either they picked everything up or the cleaning crew did. The place looked normal. Which somehow made it worse. There's something cruel about that, when the outside world keeps ticking along like nothing happened, even though everything inside you has come undone. The apartment was quiet. Still smelled like sweat and sex, though. Like betrayal had settled into the carpet and the air vents. I didn't sit down. I didn't even take off my shoes. I just walked to the bedroom, pulled the sheets off the bed, stuffed them in a garbage bag, and tossed them straight into the dumpster outside. Then I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the floor for what felt like hours. That was the first time I realized I hadn't cried yet. Not even once. The next morning, I tried to call my mom. It rang and rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. Tried the landline. Nothing. It didn't make sense, she always picked up. Always. She wasn't the kind of mom to ignore a call from her son, not unless something was seriously wrong. So I kept trying. 10, 12, 15 times. By the time I hit 20, I grabbed my keys and got in the car. Her house was about a 30-minute drive, but it felt longer that day. The whole way there, I kept rehearsing what I was going to say. I'd never imagined having to say it out loud, "Dad cheated on you, with my fiancée." Every version of the sentence made my stomach turn. I had to pull over twice just to throw up on the side of the road. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car with the engine running, palms sweating on the steering wheel. Then the front door flew open. And my mother came storming out. Except, she didn't look heartbroken. She looked furious. At me. I barely had time to unbuckle before she was at the car, yelling. "How dare you come here after what you did?" I stepped out, confused. "Mom, what are you? You hit your father?" I blinked. "Wait, what? Don't play dumb with me. He told me everything. You and Leah had a fight, and he tried to break it up, and you hit him." I froze. No. No, that's not what. And now Leah's too scared to even talk to you. She's heartbroken, Andrew. She's scared. You're lucky she hasn't called the police. I felt like I was having a stroke. Mom, listen to me. That's not what happened. I walked in on them. In bed. Together. Stop it. I have a video. Stop it, she shouted, voice cracking. You're lying. You're trying to cover for what you did. Your father has never done anything like that. I stared at her. You really think I'd make this up? She pointed at the car. Go. I don't want you here. Not until you apologize. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at my own mother like I didn't know who she was anymore. Go, she shouted again. Leave before I call the cops myself. And that was it. I got back in my car, numb, and watched as she slammed the door behind her. Like I was the villain in this story. Like I had betrayed them. In one day, I lost the two people I loved most. And now I wasn't even sure I'd been the one betrayed. The drive back home felt longer this time. Not because of traffic, there wasn't any, but because I couldn't stop thinking about what just happened. It's one thing to catch your fiancé in bed with your father. That's already a once-in-a-lifetime type of betrayal. But to go to your mother, the person you assume will always be on your side, and have her defend them? That was something I couldn't have prepared for. There are no words for that kind of whiplash. No map for where to go next when home no longer feels like it exists. She believed them. She actually believed I made it up. I could still hear her voice in my head, "Leah's scared. Your fiancé." Like she hadn't been half-naked and tangled up with my father in our bed just 24 hours earlier. I thought about the video. It was still saved on my phone, backed up to the cloud, time-stamped and undeniable. I'd filmed every second of it for exactly this reason. To prove to myself I wasn't insane. But what was I supposed to do? Email it to my mom? Upload it to Facebook with a caption that read, "Surprise, everyone." No. That wasn't me. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my life back. When I got back to the apartment, I stood outside the door for a long time. My legs didn't want to move. My hand wouldn't reach for the key. I wasn't even sure what I was afraid of. There was no one left inside. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I stepped through that door, I'd be walking into the scene again. Her voice. His voice. The weight of betrayal pressing against the walls. Eventually, I opened the door. Empty. Quiet. Lifeless. The lights were still off. The living room looked exactly the way we'd left it the day before. Except now, there was a folded note on the coffee table. Just my name. Andrew. I didn't want to touch it. But I did. Andrew. I know you probably hate me right now. You have every right to. What I did, what we did, it's unforgivable. I don't even know where to begin, so I won't try to justify any of it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Your dad and I, Ben and I, it wasn't like that at first. We started talking about wedding stuff, and then your mom's birthday, and then life in general. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. That's not your fault, it's just. I don't know. I got swept up in something I didn't understand. He told me he was unhappy. That your mom didn't really love him anymore. That their marriage was just appearances. I think I wanted to believe it because it made me feel less guilty. But I know that doesn't matter now. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say I'm sorry. I read it once. Then again. And a third time, slower. My hand started trembling around the edges of the paper. There's something so cowardly about a handwritten apology. A letter that says, "I hurt you terribly, but I don't want to look you in the eye when I admit it." And yet, some small, shriveled part of me had wanted those words. I'm sorry. As if that would make any of it easier to swallow. I dropped the letter into the trash. It wasn't anger I felt then. It was grief. Sharp, unfamiliar grief. The kind that doesn't cry or shout. It just sinks its teeth into your ribs and stays there. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I lay on the couch with the TV playing old reruns of shows Leah used to like. Shows I'd never be able to watch again without remembering the sound of her laughter on the pillow next to mine. At one point, sometime around 3 a.m., I opened my phone and watched the video again. Why, I don't know. It wasn't like I needed proof. I just needed to remind myself it was real. That I hadn't made it up in some nightmare. There he was. My father. And there she was. The man who raised me. The woman I was going to marry. The sound of her voice when she saw me. The panic. The shame. And the way he said, "Oh. It's you." Like I was the one who'd intruded. I turned the video off and sat up, hands on my face, elbows on my knees. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. We were planning a wedding. A house. A future. We'd picked out names for our future kids, laughed about which one would inherit her stubbornness and my bad taste in music. We were going to have a spring wedding. She wanted tulips in her bouquet. We'd talked about honeymooning in Italy, taking a gondola ride in Venice like one of those cheesy postcards. And now? Now she was gone. And worse, she took them with her. Because as of that night, I no longer had a father. I wasn't even sure if I had a mother anymore. Around 6 in the morning, the sun started to rise, casting pale orange across the living room floor. I'd made it through the night. Just barely. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Can we talk?" I stared at it. No name. No punctuation. Just 3 words. I didn't need to ask who it was from. Because only 2 people in the world still owed me a conversation. And I wasn't sure I was ready to hear from either of them. The text just sat there on my screen. "Can we talk?" No name. No apology. Just those 3 words, like they were enough. I stared at it for almost an hour. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it, either. I just let it hover, unanswered, like a pebble stuck in my shoe. It didn't matter which one of them sent it. Whether it was Leah or my father, both outcomes felt like a trap. A conversation would require me to look at them. To hear their voices again. To validate that they were still real people in the world and not just villains in some personal horror film. I dropped the phone on the couch and walked into the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Closed it again. I hadn't eaten since the morning Leah made French toast, less than 48 hours ago, but it felt like another lifetime. I settled for water. Even that tasted wrong. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody dropped by unannounced except family, and, well, we all know how that was going lately. I crept toward the door, looked through the peephole. It was my older brother, Mark. I opened the door before I could talk myself out of it. He stood there in jeans and a flannel, his face tight, unreadable. We hadn't spoken since Christmas, mostly because life got in the way. He lived 2 towns over, worked construction, had 2 kids under 6. We were close growing up, but adulthood has a way of scattering people. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Walked a slow lap around the living room like he was inspecting the damage. His eyes landed on the trash can where Leah's letter sat, crumpled and half covered by a pizza flyer. "I heard," he finally said. "From Mom." I scoffed. "Let me guess. She told you I assaulted Dad for no reason?" He shook his head. "She said you attacked him. That he was trying to break up a fight between you and Leah, and you snapped." "Of course she did," I muttered, sitting back on the couch. "And did you believe her?" He looked at me. Not cruel. Not pitying. Just quiet. "No," he said. I didn't. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those 2 words until he said them. My shoulders dropped, tension melting just a little. "Then what the hell are you doing here?" I asked. He exhaled through his nose, rubbed the back of his neck. "Because you're my brother. And whatever this is, whatever happened, you shouldn't be dealing with it alone." I nodded slowly, eyes watering before I could stop them. "I saw them," I said. "In bed. In our bed." He sat down next to me, jaw clenching. I punched him. Knocked him out cold. Then I told them both to be gone when I got back. Mark didn't say anything for a while. He just stared at the floor like he was seeing it happen himself. "I always thought Dad was a selfish prick," he finally said. "But I never imagined this." "Yeah," I whispered. "Me neither." We sat in silence for a long time. "Mom's completely taken his side," I added. "Told me I was lying. Said Leah's scared of me." Mark winced. "She's in denial. She always has been. You know how she is, she makes herself believe whatever version of the story lets her sleep at night. I thought if anyone would believe me, it'd be her. She can't. Because if she does, then she has to admit her husband is a monster. That she slept beside him every night while he was betraying his own son. I swallowed hard. "Do you want me to talk to her?" he asked. I shook my head. "It won't change anything." Mark looked around again. "You staying here?" "For now." "You shouldn't. You'll drive yourself crazy in this place." I nodded slowly. "I know. I just don't have anywhere else to go." He was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" "Texting my wife. Telling her I'm bringing you dinner and a bag. You're staying with us." I opened my mouth to argue, but he cut me off. "No debate. The guest room's empty, and my kids miss their uncle. You need to be around people who give a damn." And just like that, I was no longer alone. That night, in Mark's guest room, lying in a bed that didn't reek of betrayal, I finally cried. Not the frozen, wide-eyed shock I'd been stuck in for 2 days. Real crying. Ugly crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, where the hurt is so raw it doesn't even have words yet. I cried for the woman I was going to marry. For the father I thought I knew. For the mother who wouldn't even look at me without disgust in her eyes. For the wedding that would never happen. For the version of me that still believed some things were sacred. I cried until I was empty. And then, somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, I remembered the text again. "Can we talk?" I reached for my phone and opened it. No new messages. No follow-up. Just the same message, sitting there like bait. I clicked the number. And finally typed back. "No. We're done." That night at Mark's place was the first time in days that I didn't feel like I was trapped underwater. His kids had drawn me crayon masterpieces and called me Uncle Drew, like nothing was wrong. His wife, Jenna, made me a plate of spaghetti and didn't ask a single question. Not one. She just hugged me, quietly, and placed a folded towel and a toothbrush on the guest bed like I'd never left. You don't realize how starved you are for simple kindness until you've gone a few days without it. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my boss. "Take the week. And if you need longer, you've earned it." I didn't know what to reply. I just sent her a "thank you" and stared at my phone for a while. The same way you stare at a bruise, knowing it'll hurt more tomorrow. It was around 10:30 when Mark came into the guest room and sat down on the edge of the bed like we were teenagers again, like nothing had changed since we shared bunk beds and snuck midnight snacks from the kitchen. "You sleep?" he asked. I nodded. "Kind of. I meant to ask yesterday, you still have the video?" "Yeah." He hesitated. "Can I see it?" I paused. I wasn't sure why, but I felt a jolt of protectiveness, like sharing it would somehow make it more real again. Like pressing play would rewind the pain. But then I handed him the phone. He watched it without saying a word. When it ended, he handed it back. His eyes were wet. "I'm gonna kill him," he said softly. "No," I muttered. "He doesn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing he still controls us." Mark nodded, jaw tight. "So what now?" he asked. I stared at the wall. "I don't know. I guess I clean up the wreckage." The first call I made that day wasn't to Leah. It was to my mom. I had to try one more time. To make her understand. I don't know what I expected, some flicker of maternal instinct, maybe. A moment of doubt in the story my father must have spun like a magician's trick. But when she picked up, her voice was flat. Cold. "What do you want?" "I just need you to listen," I said. "Just for a minute." She sighed audibly. "Andrew. I have a video, Mom. A video. Of them. In our bed. He didn't break up a fight. He was the fight. They were sleeping together behind my back. Silence. I could feel the shift through the phone. Like someone blew the candle out on the other end. I don't want to see it, she said finally. Why not? Because if it's true, Andrew, then it means my husband betrayed me. That Leah betrayed you. That everything I thought was real isn't. Yeah, I whispered. Welcome to my world. She didn't speak. Just breathed. I'm not asking you to fix it, I said. I'm not even asking you to believe it. But I'm telling you, it happened. And I'm not going to let him make me out to be the villain for reacting like a human being. She exhaled slowly. I need time, she said. I don't have any to give you, I replied. But if you ever decide to believe your son over a man who's been lying to you for God knows how long, you know where to find me. I hung up. I didn't wait for a reply. Next came the hard part. Calling Leah's family. I didn't do it to be vindictive. I wasn't trying to destroy her world in the same way she demolished mine. But we had a wedding in the works. A life that had been merging with hers for years. Our families knew each other. Our friends knew each other. There were people in her life who deserved the truth, because they were part of our story. I started with her sister, Katie. We'd always been close. She used to call me her future brother-in-law even before I proposed. She was kind. Funny. Protective of Leah, but never blind. When I told her what happened, she cried. Not the shocked, confused kind of cry, but the gut-punched kind. She told me you hit your dad, she said through the tears. She said you were dangerous. I almost laughed. Yeah. Dangerous enough to come home early for paperwork. She didn't defend her. Not even once. She just apologized. Over and over. She's been quiet since it happened. Won't answer texts. Said she was going through something. I didn't know it was this. I don't expect anything from you, I said. I just didn't want you to hear a twisted version first. Thank you, she whispered. We hung up. She sent me a text 20 minutes later. If you ever need anything, you call me first. Okay? The day bled into evening. Around sunset, I finally got a call from a number I did recognize. Leah. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the red button. I don't know why, but I answered. There was silence on the other end for a second. Then, hi. I didn't respond. I just wanted to say. I got your text. I get it. I do. More silence. I know it doesn't change anything. But I'm sorry, Andrew. I really, really am. I waited a long moment. Do you love him? I asked. I don't know why that was the question I asked. Maybe I thought I could make sense of it all if the answer was yes. Maybe some sick part of me hoped she'd say no and that it had all been a mistake. No, she said. That somehow made it worse. I think I was just broken, she whispered. And he was there. You could have talked to me. I didn't know how. Then you had no business planning a wedding. She cried. Quietly. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. I know. You didn't just cheat, I said. You torched everything. You made me lose my father. My mother. The future I thought I had. I'm so sorry. I took a shaky breath. Don't call again. And then I hung up. This time, for good. Grief doesn't hit all at once. It's not a dramatic flood. It's slower. Like a leak in the ceiling you don't notice at first, just a tiny drip, barely audible. Then one day you wake up and your whole floor's warped. And when you try to walk across it, you fall straight through. That's what those next few weeks were like. I moved into Mark and Jenna's guest room full-time. I didn't say it out loud, but I think we all knew it wasn't temporary. They never asked when I'd leave. They just kept making space for me, extra hangers in the closet, a shelf in the bathroom, a mug in the cabinet labeled Andrew. Their kids started calling me their roommate and drawing pictures of Uncle Drew's bed. That kind of thing shouldn't break you. But it does, in the best way. At work, I kept things professional. Nobody outside of my boss knew what had happened. I buried myself in projects. I started coming in early, leaving late. At least when I was buried in spreadsheets and meetings, I wasn't picturing him in my bed. Or hearing her voice call me babe with the same mouth that had whispered to him. Leah never called again. Neither did my dad. My mom texted once. A simple, "I still need time." I never replied. Because time only means something if the person taking it plans to do something with it. One morning, about a month after it all happened, I stopped by my old apartment to grab the last of my things. Leah had moved out. The leasing office told me she turned in her key and left a forwarding address under a different last name, her maiden name. When I walked inside, the place felt like a tomb. The bookshelf was empty except for a single framed photo we must have missed during the purge. It was the two of us at the lake where I proposed. She had her arms around me. My eyes were closed, mid-laugh. I looked happy. Genuinely happy. I stood there for a while just staring at it. Then I picked it up, carried it to the dumpster behind the building, and threw it in. It didn't feel cathartic. It just felt necessary. That night, Mark and I sat on the porch after the kids had gone to bed. We shared a couple beers under the glow of the porch light, letting the summer air fill the silence. He didn't press me to talk. He never did. But that night, I needed to. "I don't know who I am without her," I said. Mark nodded slowly. "You're still you." "No. I was a fiancé. A son. I was going to be a husband. A dad someday. Now I'm just a guy living in his brother's guest room trying not to think about how everything fell apart in less than an hour." He sipped his drink. "You're more than that, Drew. You just forgot." "I think I still love her," I admitted. He raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "Not in a way that makes sense." I miss who I thought she was. I miss what we had. Or maybe what I thought we had. I don't even know anymore." "That's normal," he said. "You built a future with her in your head. It takes time to unbuild it." I looked out at the yard, the faint hum of cicadas in the distance. "Do you think Mom will ever come around?" Mark took a long breath. "Maybe. Maybe not. But if she does, it has to be her choice. You've done your part." I nodded, but it still felt hollow. "She picked him," I said. "She picked her version of the truth. Some people hold on to lies because they're easier than the fallout." I didn't answer. I just sat there, letting his words settle like dust. The following week, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to therapy. I'd seen the signs on the road a dozen times, small office building off the freeway, tucked between a dentist and a dry cleaner. I booked an appointment with a woman named Dr. Eliza Garvin. Mid-40s, straightforward, soft voice with eyes that cut through you like glass. At first, I told her everything like I was giving a police report. No emotion. Just facts. She let me. Then she asked, "What's the part you don't tell people?" That's when it all came out. How I felt like I wasn't enough. How I wondered if I missed signs because I was too distracted with work, too complacent in the relationship. How betrayal makes you question your own worth, not just your partner's choices. How I kept replaying the moment the light turned on in that room like it was stuck on a loop in my brain. I don't know how to stop being angry, I told her. You don't have to, she said. Not yet. You just have to stop letting it define everything else. That weekend, I got a call from Leah's sister, Katie. I know you said you didn't want to hear anything else, she said cautiously. But I thought you should know. Know what? She's moving to Chicago. I paused. Why are you telling me? Because it means she's leaving. For good. You probably won't hear from her again. I didn't answer. I thought you deserved the closure, Katie said. Or at least, the knowledge. Thanks, I murmured. I appreciate it. After we hung up, I stared out the window for a long time. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel sad. I just felt still. Like something inside me had finally stopped spinning. Healing doesn't happen all at once. You don't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm over it now. It creeps in. Slowly. Quietly. It's in the nights you don't check your phone to see if they texted. It's in the silence that doesn't ache anymore. It's in the laugh that sneaks out when you're watching something dumb on TV and realize you weren't thinking about them at all. It's in the moment you look at your reflection and think, maybe I'm going to be okay after all. And I think, maybe I am. Not today. But someday. 3 months passed. By then, the sharpest edges of the pain had dulled, replaced by something less jagged but more persistent. A kind of emotional scar tissue. I wasn't waking up in a cold sweat anymore. The rage had simmered into a quiet ache. I wasn't okay, not fully, but I could go a whole day without thinking about the sound Leah made when she saw me standing in the doorway that day. I was back in my own place, a one-bedroom downtown. Nothing fancy, just clean lines, quiet neighbors, and the kind of solitude that felt like oxygen. I'd painted the walls myself. Bought new furniture. Swapped out the bed for a mattress no one else had ever touched. That felt important. Like a reset button. Work was steady. Therapy was ongoing. I even signed up for a weekend woodworking class, which felt like the sort of thing people do when they're trying to build themselves back, literally and otherwise. It was awkward at first, me, surrounded by retirees and overly enthusiastic hobbyists, but I didn't care. The smell of cut pine and fresh varnish gave me something to focus on besides memory. Mark still checked in regularly. Jenna invited me for dinner once a week. Her kids demanded bedtime stories from Uncle Drew. I tried to write one once, about a bear who got his heart stolen and wandered the forest trying to find it again. It didn't end well. I never read that one aloud. And then, one Saturday morning, it happened. I ran into my father. I was at the grocery store, arms full of coffee and toilet paper, when I turned the corner and nearly collided with a shopping cart. I looked up, ready to apologize, until I saw him. Ben. Dad. Whatever name you want to use for a man who forfeits both titles. He looked older. Or maybe it was just guilt aging him. His hair was grayer, his posture slightly slouched. He wasn't alone. He was standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, dark hair, a distant smile that vanished the second she saw my face. He froze. So did I. For a full 10 seconds, neither of us said a word. Then he took a tentative step forward. Andrew, he said. I didn't respond. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat, my jaw tightening. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to run him over with the cart. I wanted to ask him why. Why he did it. Why he took her. Why he broke everything. But I didn't do any of that. I just said, don't. He stopped. The woman beside him glanced back and forth between us, sensing the history but not knowing the script. He started. Don't, I said again, louder this time. We're not doing this. Not here. He swallowed hard. I wanted to say. You've said enough. I turned to leave. But he called after me. She left me. That stopped me. I turned back slowly. He wasn't smiling. Wasn't looking for pity. He looked tired. She moved out 2 weeks ago, he said. Didn't even leave a note. Something cold flickered through me. Satisfaction? Bitterness? Maybe both. Congratulations, I said. Now you know how it feels. He winced. I know I deserve that. No, you deserve worse. I walked back toward him, but slowly, each step measured. You didn't just cheat on my mom, I said, keeping my voice low. You didn't just blow up your marriage. You took mine down with it. You shattered everything. You made me question whether I was even worth being loyal to. He looked down. And the worst part? I added. I looked up to you. For years. Even when we fought. Even when you were wrong. I still thought, at your core, you were decent. He looked like he wanted to respond. But I wasn't finished. And now I get to spend the rest of my life unlearning that. Thanks for that. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I'm sorry, he whispered. I shook my head. You don't get to say that to me. Not anymore. I turned and walked away. My legs were shaking as I pushed the cart to the checkout line, but I didn't look back. Later that night, I sat on my couch with a glass of whiskey and replayed the moment in my head. 1,000 times. She left him. That was the sentence that kept circling like a vulture. Not because it made me feel better, it didn't. Not really. But because it made something finally click. It was never about me. Not really. What Leah did. What he did. It was never a reflection of my worth. It was about their emptiness. Their weakness. Their need to chase something reckless and selfish and temporary. For months, I'd been carrying this weight like it was mine to bear. But it wasn't. It was theirs. I lifted my glass in the quiet. To new beginnings, I muttered. Then I drained it. There's this thing they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't just change how you feel about the person who broke you. It changes you. Your wiring. Your rhythms. The way you show up in the world. It becomes a before and after event in your identity. There was Andrew, age 27, who believed in family. And there was Andrew, age 27 and one day, who didn't. 3 weeks after I saw my father in the grocery store, my mother called. She didn't text. Didn't leave a voicemail. Just called. 4 times. I ignored the first 3. On the 4th, I picked up. Andrew, she said. Her voice was thin. Fragile. Like it might break mid-sentence. I didn't answer. I saw the video, she whispered. That sentence punched through me like ice water. I had to watch it a few times to even believe it. I still can't wrap my head around it. I could hear something in the background, probably the kitchen fan. It was late. Maybe she couldn't sleep. I was wrong, she said quietly. I chose denial because it was easier. Because it let me hold on to something that wasn't real anymore. But you were telling the truth. Silence. I should have believed you. Still, I said nothing. He's gone, she continued. Took his things and left 3 days ago. I don't know where he is, and I don't care. I could almost see her, standing in the dark of our old kitchen, one hand on the counter for balance, staring out the window into nothing. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it from me. I failed you. And I'm sorry. I swallowed. Tried to find something inside me, anger, relief, tears. But all I found was space. Empty, quiet space. Thank you, I said at last. I'd like to see you, she added. I hesitated. Not yet, I said. But maybe. She understood. I could hear it in her sigh. I'll wait. And then she hung up. A few weeks later, Katie, Leah's sister, invited me to a small community event she was volunteering at. She said I didn't have to stay long, just come for a little bit, maybe say hello to people, get out of the house. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I could stand in a crowded room again without flinching. That I could move through a space where my past wasn't dripping from the walls. It was held at a local park, a small fundraiser for the rec center, with food trucks and booths selling art and handmade soaps and local honey. The sun was out. The air felt clean. Nobody looked at me like I was the guy who got cheated on by his dad and fiancée. And that's where I met her. Emily. She was managing the book booth for the local library, messy ponytail, rolled sleeves, a t-shirt that said "Read Banned Books." She gave me a crooked smile when I made a lame joke about the smell of old paperbacks being my second favorite cologne. We talked for 20 minutes before Katie pulled me away to help stack chairs. But I kept looking back. And she kept smiling. When I left, she gave me a bookmark with the library's name scribbled on it. And on the back? Her number. I didn't text her right away. Took me a couple days to work up the nerve. When I finally did, it was simple. Hey. I was the guy with the bad joke and the worse haircut. Wanna get coffee sometime? She replied a minute later. Only if you bring that charming sarcasm with you. Our first coffee wasn't magical. It wasn't cinematic. There were no slow-motion glances across the room, no background music swelling as we laughed into each other's eyes. It was just two people sitting across from each other in a quiet cafe, trying not to be strangers. But it was honest. And that felt like magic in its own right. Emily showed up in jeans, no makeup, and a leather-bound notebook in hand. She ordered a black coffee with 1 sugar and a lemon poppy seed muffin. I got the usual, double espresso, no frills. So, she said after a few minutes of warm-up conversation. What's your tragic backstory? I nearly choked on my drink. She smiled. Sorry. That's probably not the most tactful thing to ask on a first hangout. No, I said, coughing into my napkin. It's just, not the question I expected. She looked at me gently. You've got that look, you know. The kind people get when they've had their heart cracked open. Like you're trying to hold the pieces in with duct tape. I raised an eyebrow. That obvious? She shrugged. Only to people who've worn the same expression. I nodded. You too? Oh, yeah, she said. My ex-fiancé cheated on me with his gym buddy. I found out when he posted a "celebrating love" photo on Instagram, and forgot to crop my dog out of the background. Rookie mistake. I laughed. It caught me off guard, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, surprise, maybe. Relief. You? I paused. My fiancé cheated on me with my dad. She blinked. Holy sh*t. Yeah. There was a moment of silence between us. Then she said, very calmly. Okay, you win. We both laughed again, deeper this time. Real. And for the first time in months, I felt something inside me loosen. Not break. Just shift. Like the first crack of sunlight under a storm cloud. After that, things moved slow. And that's how I wanted it. Emily and I started texting here and there. No pressure. Just check-ins. Funny memes. Random observations about life. She sent me a picture of a possum eating watermelon once with the caption, "My mental state today." I sent back a photo of a chicken with sunglasses. We went on 2 more coffee dates before either of us acknowledged we were, in fact, going on dates. By the 4th, I told her the full story. Not just the dad part. Everything. Leah's letter. My mother's denial. The grocery store run-in. The therapy. The silence. Emily didn't interrupt. She didn't look away. She didn't say something trite like, "You deserve better." She just listened. When I was done, she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "That's a hell of a thing to survive," she said. I nodded. "Some days I'm still not sure I did." "You did," she said. "Because you're still here." And somehow, that mattered more than all the sympathy I'd gotten before. We didn't talk about love. Not yet. There were no promises, no fireworks, no candlelit confessions. Just slow walks. Movie nights. Laughing over board games at her apartment while her cat, Truman, tried to knock every game piece off the table. We were 2 people who'd seen too much. Who carried ghosts in our ribcages. But something about our bruises lined up just right. Like puzzle pieces that had once been crushed and reshaped. She didn't try to fill the Leah-shaped hole in my heart. She just sat beside it. And some nights, that was enough. One Saturday afternoon, about 6 months after I'd watched my world unravel, I stood on my mom's porch. She'd been texting every so often. Short messages. Nothing heavy. Just, "Thinking of you," or, "I made your favorite cookies if you're ever nearby." I hadn't responded until now. The door opened before I knocked. She looked smaller. Like she'd shrunk in the past half-year. But her eyes were clearer. Her voice steadier. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She stepped aside. "Come in?" I nodded. We sat in the kitchen. Same linoleum floor. Same pale green walls. But the energy was different. The room felt like it had been aired out. She poured tea. Pushed the sugar toward me like old times. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then, quietly, she said, "I miss you." I swallowed. "I miss you too." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn photo, the one from Leah's and my engagement shoot. We were standing under an oak tree, her hand on my chest, both of us smiling like we didn't know the world could fall apart. "I kept it," she said. "Not because of her. But because you looked happy. I like remembering you that way." I took it from her. Looked at it for a moment. Then flipped it over. On the back, written in her handwriting, was one word, "before." That nearly broke me. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm not that person anymore." She nodded. "I know. But I'm still me. Just, different." She placed her hand over mine. "And I'll get to know this version of you, too. If you'll let me." Spring came late that year. It crept in quietly, like it was afraid to take up space. One morning I noticed the trees outside my new apartment window had tiny green buds, like the world was cautiously breathing again. I stood there for a long time, holding my coffee, just watching them sway. I hadn't noticed the seasons changing in a while. That felt important. A few days later, I met Emily for a walk in the park. We didn't have a plan. No dinner reservation, no tickets to anything. Just a warm Saturday and nowhere we had to be. She brought iced tea in a thermos. I brought cookies I tried to bake and mostly burned. We found a bench by the pond and sat in silence, watching ducks fight over breadcrumbs like they were battling for survival. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked quietly. She didn't have to say who. "Sometimes," I said. "But it's like remembering a dream I woke up from." I know it happened, but it doesn't feel real anymore. She nodded. I get that. I glanced over. Do you? My ex messaged me last week, she said, taking a sip of her tea. Asked how I was. Said he still thinks about me. I raised an eyebrow. And? I left him on read. I smiled. Strong move. She bumped her shoulder into mine. Damn right. We sat there for a long time. Not talking. Not needing to. Just, there. Later that week, I got an email from my father. Subject line, for what it's worth. I didn't open it. I didn't delete it either. It just sat there. Like so many things we never say out loud. Therapy ended a month after that. Dr. Garvin said I was ready. I didn't believe her at first. But what if I fall apart again? I asked. You might, she said. And then you'll put yourself back together. You've done it before. That night, I made a list of things I wanted to do, not bucket list stuff, but small things. Human things. Evidence of life things. Host dinner for Mark and Jenna. Go a full day without checking social media. Hike alone. Write something that isn't about pain. Ask Emily what we're doing, if she hasn't asked me first. And the last one. Visit the lake. It took me 5 months to make that final drive. The lake where I proposed. It was still there. Still calm. Still surrounded by trees that whispered with the wind. I brought nothing but a folding chair and a photo I found while packing boxes from the old apartment. The same one my mom had. Me and Leah. Under the oak. I stared at it for a while. Then I folded it once, twice, and slid it under a flat stone by the tree. Not to honor it. Just to leave it behind. Closure doesn't mean forgiving them. It means forgiving yourself for not seeing it coming. Emily moved in 6 months after that. It was her idea. I didn't flinch. We shared space easily. She took the left side of the bed. Truman the cat took the middle, often pushing me to the edge. We didn't talk about marriage. We didn't have to. Love, this time, didn't come in firework bursts or candlelit declarations. It came in small things. Her buying my favorite cereal even though she hated it. Me charging her Kindle without her asking. Her falling asleep on the couch with her glasses on. Me brushing her hair out of her eyes and pretending I didn't care when she snored. It wasn't perfect. It was real. And that made it sacred. A year after the betrayal, I stood in front of a mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. Not because he was broken. But because he wasn't. His face had new lines. His eyes had seen too much. But his shoulders? They stood straight. He wasn't waiting for someone to make him whole anymore. He was whole. Bent. But whole. If you're looking for a storybook ending, this isn't it. I don't live in a beach house with 3 perfect kids and a dog named Lucky. I still get pangs sometimes. Ghost aches. I still avoid certain songs and sometimes wake up from dreams where I walk into that bedroom again. But I wake up beside someone who knows those dreams exist, and never lets me walk through them alone. I don't love like I used to. I love better. And that's enough.